On the Fringe with Dan Radio Style. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. I've got a super special guest in the house today, Mr. Derek Johnson. This guy has busted open everything lately. I've shared, obviously, you guys, I hope you've paid attention. We shared, and beforeitsnews.com, there's been a couple of his videos. One's about an hour and a half long. One's about 3.5 hours long, and both of them are magic. And we're going to talk a lot about what's going on with that. And I've got some questions that I want to see if maybe Derek can help us figure out. But I want super proud to have you on the show, brother. And first off, I kind of wanted to give a plug. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it, but you've actually got DerekJohnsonCountry.com. You got music, man. In fact, this Right Beer Right Now, which I like me some beer. This is a great song. And we got Right Beer Right Now, and you got another really popular song that's down here. I think, Real Cool Kinda Hot. So again, guys, check him out. Maybe give some love. Certainly, if you like some country music, I think you're going to dig his stuff. So maybe you can buy some music from the guy and try to help him out because he's one of the Patriots and he's fighting on. But Derek, welcome, sir. Nice to have you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure for sure. Now let's talk about a couple things. Now we obviously, I think one of the key things that you've pointed out is President Trump is still president. Now, I would say or caveat that, and I'm hoping you can kind of maybe offer some of your clarity to it, that obviously Congress put in Biden. So I'm wondering, are we maybe at one of those times in history where we've got two presidents? I think you had mentioned there was one other time in history where that might have happened. So maybe you could just kind of help explain that to people a little bit, kind of in the best way you can.
Well, there was everything's always a little different than history, but it was a Commonwealth Act 671 that I'm referring to, and it's in our law books. It was when Franklin D. Roosevelt, in World War II, which is a lot of optics around that, which is very key with what's going on with President Trump. So you always have to be able to parallel that with what's going on now, anytime you look at anything in history. And the point that I brought up with the Commonwealth Act was the Philippines. They put in a president as a puppet for the people to see, and the world thought he was president, but the actual president was in exile, and he was in full control of his military and full control of the protection of his people via military, and nothing was going to happen to his people. They just put in a puppet. Now, this guy was actually was sick, the actual president. So it wasn't even so much to do with political issues. There was a lot of health issues, things like that. But President Trump, by legalities, he's still president from that standpoint. But it was always an optic thing in the first place, because this is what you call, it's just a covert operation. And when people hear that, two words, covert operation, they just think, oh, an operation. And it's like, no, covert operation means it's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of unity via, I call it God-inspired people, because God called me up, and I just answered the call. So it's a lot of guys and girls like me that answered this call and unified together and came together for one humanitarian effort to go, okay, this we were going to go right on down the rails. If Hillary would have won, we'd have really been in bad shape. And then, so and the other thing people just have to truly, I want to drive home, is this is not a Republican or Democrat thing. This is an evil versus evil.
And I've been plugging that too huge. So but please.
Yeah. And it has nothing to do with your background or your preferences. I mean, that's my cool double standard. It has nothing to do with it, but it has everything to do with it.
Very good.
So it's like, you're not going to be able to be whatever you think you are or whatever you identify as. You're not going to be able to have that if you're not free. So I always tell people, you're only as free as your surroundings allow you to be.
And that's, I think, one thing a lot of people forget is, everybody most everybody wants to get back to normal. Like, when am I going to get back to how it used to be? Guys, you got to understand, used to be is never going to happen again. And we've got this new awesome norm that we're going to create. But nothing like, that's why Trump keeps saying the best is yet to come. And folks, that's what we're living through right now. So this is the time where we don't go backwards. We're only going forwards, and we are living through that transition. And literally, Trump is still president, right? I mean,
well, if I could just even jumping in there, something exciting that happened with the speech y'all saw the other night. It was a lot of optics in that. And you mentioned the word best. Best is when you're in chess, right? If you best someone, that means that you've got them cornered. Okay. Well, the other night there was a lot of optics in that speech with Biden, and I don't try not to address my message with the Q a lot until people understand simplicities of law and order. But the Q drops are real. August 29th, the Q drop was President Trump standing behind two Marines, and the message was simply this: Castle clean, Q. Well, September the 1st was a speech that everybody thought they saw. The ones that still think Biden's president sees this guy. Well, he's in the form of a king. He's got two knights behind him. Knights. First off, the other optic is you have position of attention, parade rest, and at ease. It's never changed. Those are three different things you do in the military. Those Marines were standing with their hands in front of them. Okay, that's a no-no.
Really?
Their pants were real loose.
Oh, yeah, they're supposed to be behind them, aren't they? The hands?
Yeah, parade rest is supposed to be behind you.
Oh.
Okay. So their pants are loose, they're not custom fit, and then the gold fringe flag is right beside them. Okay, so there was a lot of optics within optics.
Do you think they were like fake Marines, or do you think legitimate Marines were asked to do that? And
no, a legit Marine won't do that. They're
nice.
Not going to do that.
That's a huge call out. That's a huge call out.
The optics around that too. So there's optics within optics,
and the red light too. Let's not leave that out.
The bigger optic is this: when you look up the chess move, a king and two knights cannot checkmate. Okay, they're stalemate. It means that they're forced into a corner and they cannot move. So that's the optic around that. Like, you can look that move up. Now, I've got a group that's out there that's like been digging deep into chess, and I'm like, look, don't overthink this thing. They were talking about, well, what if the pawn moves here and that? No, the optic is, it says a king and two knights are stalemate, and the only best is stalemate. Well, that's in the actual chess language. The only best is stalemate. Well, there's your best optic. And then stalemate, you got to look up the definition. If you don't know what the definition of stalemate is, stalemate means that he's in an action that cannot move forward. So
stuck, basically stuck in the mud.
Yeah. So it's, you did have to be following the optics from the beginning to understand, to be looking for the optics in what was other night. But
now, one weird question I have, and I'm really curious what your thoughts are on the matter, is we've got obviously good generals and bad generals. And I think one thing that's very confusing to a lot of my listeners, right? You got Milley and people like that. And I'm not asking you to besmirch anyone or anything. I know you're still, you're not active anymore, but I assume there's still some respect for how things work. But how does that, just if you can help us maybe understand, how would good generals and then bad generals, how does that happen? How do they get separated? How does the good guys just keep moving down a path and try to make this change happen versus the people that have no clue and are out there in front of the TV cameras saying crazy stuff? Like, can you kind of maybe offer some color to that, help us understand how that plays out?
Yeah, it's just like anything else in life. You get persuaded by money. Then you also have power. There's my dad always said, you give a man a badge, he thinks he's God. Now, he didn't mean all cops. He didn't mean all, but you just, when you give someone this authority over people, they sometimes power trip. Look at our TV show Andy Griffith. Look at Barney Fife. It was a fun show and funny show, but look at what Barney did versus what Andy did. You got different styles of leadership, but at the same time, Barney wasn't really a leader from the standpoint of Andy gave him a lot more credit to make him feel like that he was doing a lot more than what he was doing. So when you look at generals, you're talking about, outside of being president, you're talking about the highest chain of command in the whole military. All right. And I'll never forget this personally. I was standing in formation one day. We were standing in battalion formation. So there was like 4 or 5, 6 different batteries there. And one of my sergeants leaned over and whispered in my ear to look. We were looking at the sergeant major, and he was like, that guy, excuse my language, but he said, that guy shit on a lot of people to get right there. Well, what people have to understand is, like, when you get to such a level as an E8 and you're moving up to an E9, which you're moving up to a first sergeant, even just a first sergeant alone, when you get to that status, well, there were a lot of sergeants that were qualified to be a first sergeant. Well, then you got a lot of first sergeants that were qualified to be a sergeant major. Okay. Then you got a lot. So you just, as you keep moving up the ladder, there were a lot of people that got that promotion. So one person gets the promotion, and look how many people were eligible for promotion, and no one thinks about that.
Can you offer speculation though into how? I mean, I hate to do this.
Oh yeah, well, no, I mean,
how many of these bad guys are there? A lot.
Well, there were a few. There was a lot more good than there were bad. But it depends on which one's in what position and what they're doing, what kind of calls and shots they have to make, and who was associated with who. I'm like Millie. There's a lot of white hats in this operation. Now, he's not one of them that I know of, but there are some what they call white hats. There's some guys that appear to be, and they're not. Jeff Sessions, I know very well, is not. He's a white hat. He didn't turn on Trump. He was. You have to read the book, The Art of War. Right. I know that it's boring for people, but it's real. It shows the mindset of, okay, if you're doing this, then do this, and then okay, make the enemy think this. So basically, what they did, they lured a lot of guys out. They made a lot of guys damn themselves or hang themselves. But there's a lot of them that are also white hat operatives that appear to be, but that those people pulled the other ones out. That weren't willing to step out and show their own colors. So it's a lot of chess. It's a lot of chess moves. It's a lot of art of war. Paralleling art of war. Why did President Trump write a book called The Art of the Deal? So it's like there's a lot of guys that people don't really like. President Trump, everybody thinks he's a dumb guy. This, that, and other. I'd say everybody. Some of the left.
Yeah.
Guy is super brilliant. When all this comes out, people are going to find out this guy is.
He's an uber genius. He's got an exceptionally high IQ.
I'm sitting there calling our CIC this guy, but I'm just, it's just that I'm giving him credit where it's due in a lot of other ways, besides just being CIC and president. But yeah, Millie and people, it'll all play out. But you always have traitors. We would never have the story about the Alamo if we didn't have a traitor, who fled. So.
You think that's a big part of this? Is just trying to out the bad guys and we don't want to out the good guys yet, obviously, because I think it's just a hair too early. But I feel like we're really close.
What I did, I've actually I've been invited to go on the Reawakening tour. I haven't got my official invitation yet, but I've also got another tour with the truthtour.net. These guys too, Jason Q and a lot of the guys are well within the General Flynn crew, and I got word via General Flynn, and also I've heard them talking to them, saying I helped speed things up just because of the fact that people were so asleep still to this point. So that's kind of a feather in my cap that if I can ever verify that for sure via General Flynn and President Trump's teams, but they never, this was a controlled operation. They were never going to tell the people. President Trump's in multiple videos saying, look, we're never going to tell the people, hey, I'm not going to tell you, hey, today we're going to Mosul, we're going to bomb tomorrow. We're not going to tell anything. All I did, though, was tell what is in law, tangibly in law. For anybody who's mad at me out there, it's like you can look all this stuff up on, and it's all in our law books. Now, if the flights were supposed to be flying blackout, they'll fly blackout.
Yeah, that's the thing I keep trying to remind people. It's like they can hide this stuff very easily. The fact that you can see it, or that Monkey Works is talking about it, or whoever, it's because they want you to know. Otherwise you wouldn't.
They wanted people to be more awake by this point. That's why I got so frustrated with veterans. Mine was more geared towards veterans because everybody wants to go on Veterans Day, get a pat on the back, go get a free meal. But when you start talking military law, especially with another veteran, and a veteran's looking at you like, don't know. And I'm like, the National Guard, federalized. You don't know who federalizes the National Guard? I wasn't in the National Guard. It don't matter. You're in the military. You should know this stuff. Like, it was, I started getting frustrated. But there was more people were supposed to be awake by now.
That brings up, I think, one of the coolest points. And I feel like right now is a good time to touch upon it. Like, I think most people are like, when's Trump coming back? When's Trump coming back? But it's like, no, we're asking the question wrong. Trump is already there. When are you as an individual going to wake up? And I don't mean you, Derek. I mean you, whoever's watching.
You're spot on.
That's my question is, in your mind, how do you see that like, what are some legal ways that transition can come? Because military law, the laws very well. I mean, you got a master's degree, like you're a very bright guy, and you know the military side of things very, very well. So I mean, I hate to say speculate, but kind of we need to at this point a little bit, just to give the people out there, one, some hope, and two, some things to grab onto that they can like look into themselves, that they can go, holy crap, he really is in charge. Like, it's one thing to say it, and I totally agree with everything you've said, but it's like I feel like we got to smack him in the face with it a little bit more, like a dead fish, like what do you think?
Well, I understand. I get a lot of questions like, why are we witnessing what we're witnessing with our gas and our prices and our food? And, if Trump's in charge, why would he do this? And if Trump's in charge, why would the border look like this? I'm like, first off, have you been to the border? So a lot of actors, a lot of acting going on. It's an optic. It was to wake everybody up. Part of it was to wake everybody up that are asleep. Okay. Because the only way we can have a true revolution, and I say a revolution, I don't talk about fighting revolution.
Right. Yeah.
I'm alluding to what you were saying earlier. America is an idea that was written on a piece of paper. We have to fight for it every single day. We can't just be lackadaisical and expect Congress to do things. I've heard that so many, and here I am, I'm only 39. And I've heard that so many years in my lifetime. Well, that's Congress's job. Oh, that's out of my pay grade. I don't have any. So no, you have say so. It is your duty to tell your local representatives and your state representatives. It's your duty to tell them what you want, and get on the phone and blow their phones up, blow their emails up. They work for you. So that's one thing. The other thing is, the hope with it outside of law and order that shows he's president is the fact that just like this week coming up, obviously we have an important day in our history, 9/11, which will be in 6 days. I'm looking at my calendar here.
Yep.
Well,
today's 5th.
Guess what, ladies and gentlemen, what I've been preaching this whole time in law and order, nothing of mine is an opinion. It's on law and order. Now, you don't have to like the law and order, like I tell people, but if you're mad at me for telling you the truth of what's in the law books, you got a long life ahead of you, period. But 9/11 is the deadline for the extension of Executive Order 13848, which I think is one of the most important pieces of paper.
Well, remind people what that one is.
Okay, Executive Order 13848. President Trump signed it September the 12th, 2018. All right. Inside that order, it specifically says in the first paragraph, I hereby declare a national emergency. All right. Then on the second paragraph, third all the way down, it outlines a 4545, which was an election committee. And what days of the report? They were going to report 45 days after the election and then 45 days after that. Okay, so when you read all in that, I've already had one of the big platforms out there trash talking, saying I'm wrong, and I'm like, you clearly didn't read, my friend. Well, they said, well, it don't say in there, like you said, November the 3rd, 2020, and it don't say maritime law. Well, let me show you where it says it. Okay, first you got to understand what a national emergency is. A national emergency, when a president declares a national emergency, Congress, not Congress today, not Congress 10 years down the road, that Congress is supposed to address that national emergency. The reason why Congress wouldn't address that national emergency is because Congress had a lot of black hats, had a lot of guys with their hands in Ukraine, China, the Chinese Communist Party. President Trump signed multiple executive orders that's saying, hey, if you're involved with the Chinese Communist Party, your assets will be frozen effective immediately. Executive Order 13959 specifically says that. So you had to been reading these orders. So a national emergency, very important. They did not address that national emergency because why? They'd have been telling on themselves. So they couldn't address the national emergency. Certain people in Congress could not do that because they would have been arrested, period, anyways. They were going to be arrested either way. So they were trapped. Another chess move. So then you look at on down in the order. Okay, on down in the order, it specifically says the 4545 around the election. The title of the whole executive order says the word election. Well, if he wrote it in 2018, what was the next election up? Presidential election, November 3rd, 2020. It specifically says November 3rd, 2020 without saying it. So people out there that don't read into that. The other thing where it says maritime law, no, it don't say the words maritime law in there, but it says this: blocking and prohibiting the foreign exchange of goods and
is maritime law, correct?
It says they will not enter the what? United States jurisdiction Well, what do we have around the United States? We have U.S. and state maritime borders. What is maritime? It is the law of water, so it's like it's all right there. And that's why the warehouses are going to be depleting. And the more they deplete and the more they deplete and they can't restock with the foreign goods that were coming in, then that's why your shelves are short. That's why we have shortages everywhere in different kind of perishables and things like that. The same thing with the baby formula. President Trump laid down optics, bring your companies back, bring them back, bring them back. People who didn't bring them back a lot of them were funding the Chinese Communist Party. And we just can't have that. There's a lot of hidden stuff that the people would never dream was going on.
Now, you talked about the financial thing, and I think that's a key point. And I was curious if you'd maybe speculate a little bit on this, but Nancy Pelosi is obviously bad, obviously tied up with her deep money and all that. And like you said, I think this is a show going on right now. And you were mentioning, I watched about half of your thing with Nino, which was really good from what I was watching. I love Nino. He's a good guy. But I wonder if that's part of the show, like you were talking about, and if they got Nancy to go to China, like, I'm just curious what you think that was all about, because that seemed like it had a really weird, like, it just made Nancy look like she was going to do what she was going to do. The fact that it pissed off China, now they're lobbing missiles over Taiwan. Like, what? Just if you can give what you think kind of that was about.
Well, it's kind of like that. I always bring up the TV show. I'm giving them a lot of props, but shout outs, I guess. But the guys that sit behind the scene and they're saying, "Hey, Dan, go in front of these people and just bend over and just stare at this person's ear." Yeah. Like you're like, I don't want to. So it's that show. So everything you're seeing, every single facet of everything that people are seeing is a show. The generals and President Trump are trolling the living, especially after you saw a funeral service for Joe Biden on January 20th, 2021. Everything after that is them going, hey, make that bird poop on Biden right now. Hey, make him fall off his bike right now. Tell him to fall off his bike. Okay, you got a guy who shuffles to the podium like he's about to blow 8 Taco Bells out of his butt like a Civil War cannon. But now all of a sudden he can get on a bicycle and ride down. Like, what are people not putting together like that? So it's an act. Everything Pelosi is an act. What they're doing is making them damn themselves or hang themselves. The best way to learn a lesson in life is to fall on your own versus someone telling on you.
And the thing that I think is hard for people to understand, and maybe you can help clarify too, or at least I'm thinking it's the same direction you're going with your discussion, but it's like people need to see how corrupt these individuals were, and the way the play or the act or whatever is playing out is for them to show that. So they're blatantly being obvious about how nefarious they are. And this, basically Trump's like, look, you either do this or we're going to hang you publicly. Take your pick.
Well, yeah, the big for those that aren't behind the scenes and don't know the art of war, don't know chess moves, operatives, and operations. For those that don't know that, and that's okay, you're not supposed to in a lot of ways. But for those who don't know that, you're seeing what's supposed to be truth. Like that's what one of the guys we were talking about the other day, that the people have to be able to see the difference in truth on their own. I can't make you see that. Okay, so but then you come back here when this all started. Yes, President Trump and the generals, they gave them the same thing. You see it in movies, you see it in TV shows, any kind of plea bargains. They said, look, here's your chance to, if you want to live, and you whatever based off their crime, whatever the depth of their crime was, they'd say, here's the deal. All right, you get to do this if you do this. Okay, so they would have arrested probably 50 people in the beginning. Okay, and then the rest of them they plugged in those actors there, and the others were still the real people, and then they made more arrests. So they're playing a part in a role, and it was to make everybody else come out of their holes, or rat holes as we call them, flush them out of their holes, and dispose themselves to the people, which President Trump said multiple times over and over again. No one listened. Everybody thought he was just rallying up his base and things like that, but President Trump specifically said the evidence and crimes will be displayed to the public in full accordance to the law. So he told you right there that everything was going to go in a controlled effort, and everybody was going to damn themselves, hang themselves at a certain period of time after they exposed themselves. So, it's really, you have to pick up. It's the same thing as like a movie. If, you're anticipating this movie, well, you can't hop in the middle of it and appreciate that movie.
Right. And you're going to get a little foreshadow. And at the same time, sometimes they're going to try to get you to lean in one direction because they want it to look like it's going there, but ultimately it's not. And I think, again, part of the awakening process, this isn't about a 4-year election. So you've got a bunch of Republicans that are like, yeah, it's my guy's in charge. It's like, no, it's not about that. And then you got Democrats that are like, he's such a horrible guy. It's like, no, this whole thing is meant to show everybody on both sides that we have been lied to for decades.
Yes,
hundreds of years, probably, really.
Well, 150 years with the corporation, then but thousands of course, like
1871, right? Was that when?
1871. And see, you can't Google that. You have to. I mean, you can, but it's hidden, and you have to be able to put those pieces of the puzzle together.
Now, speaking of which, while we're on the subject, where is the place people can get your documents? I've heard they're not necessarily easy to find. I've had a few people reach out to me and say, "Hey, how the heck can I get his documents?" So where?
Oh yeah, so I get them. I thought at first when I was on this video that after like 1,000 people viewed it, if 50 people might want to be on the documents. So I was like, hey, I'll put you on my Google Drive. Well, about 2,000 emails in, I'm like, okay, I can't do this, going and adding everybody. So we put a file and we were going to blast them via email, via PDFs. Well, about 15,000 emails in. I'm like, okay, let's put them on a website. So they're on PDF form where you can just click on the link. It'll send tabs. It'll separate the tabs and documents because there's 6 different pieces of documents. So it's 6 documents. And all the links are in there. You click on the links, it goes straight over to the doc.
Is that on DerekJohnsonCountry.com?
No, it's www.the or whatever part of the country you say the. I say the documents S with the S on there, plural. The documents.info.
.info. Okay, cool. I will plug that, but that's again the documents, the documents.info. Guys, go there, check it out. Do you have a little bit of data you require from them, like an email address or something like that, or can they just download it straight from there?
Oh, they download it straight from there.
Cool.
It's a PDF form. They give it a moment because it's a lot. It's about 500 pages for all of them, not one each, is 500. But it takes it a moment to load up unless you got the best internet in the world, it'll pop it right up. But
not that Alabama internet, but something
yeah,
crazy.
If you got Alabama internet like some of us do down here in the South, like it's going to take it a moment, but it's okay. We'll pull it up. All the pictures there. And then also I've got a Rumble video out that where I break down the rant. I do the rant again without the rant, and I break down all these executive orders. And it's just my Rumble is RattleTrap 1776, and it's just breaking down these orders. It don't show everything. Naturally, it's already 3 hours long, and someone messes in, hey, can I get the Reader's Digest version? I'm like, that is it, So, but you can't shorten down a 150-year problem in 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 45. There's just no way.
Yeah, and that's something I ask of some people out there. We've got a lot of people, like you've said, the attention span of the average American is probably 2 to 5 minutes at best. So this isn't necessarily for everybody, but for those of you that are people that like, I can't, it's too long, I don't like to read. All right, well, there are probably people doing videos. There's probably going to be people that are going to try to surmise. It's kind of like devolution is another one of those things where I don't like to read. It's like, yeah, the problem is it's really hard to simplify it even further than what Patel Patriot's done. So it's the same with you. You've condensed this down to the finest, delicious soup you possibly can, or sauce. There's not much. It's a complex problem that's been going on, like you said, since 1871 at least, if not longer. So yeah, it's going to require a little effort, and that's the part of waking up. Like people don't want to. I don't want it to affect me. I want to go back to normal. No, that's not what's happening, folks. You're waking up, and it sucks. It's like your alarm clock goes off. You don't want it to make the noise. You don't want to wake up, but you have to. So that's where
you're living through history, and you should want to.
It's the best time to be alive ever. This is a
it is.
Time
it's
to be alive.
Take pride in it. Yeah, Amen. You want to take pride in that. Say, man, tell your kids I lived through that.
I'll tell you, it's so funny. Like my whole life, I thought this was going to happen someday, but I always figured I was crazy because like it wasn't happening and nobody was ever waking up. And I'm like, whatever, I'm just crazy. I'd still tell some people that had, the ears to hear and the eyes to see, but I just assumed I was nuts. And then Donald Trump became president. And then it was right after everybody started attacking him that I was like, oh, it's now. Okay, game on. And that was it. And like at that moment in my life, my entire life finally made sense. It's kind of the thing I've joked about. So yeah, I feel like that's where we are.
Well, and like you said, I alluded to earlier, I didn't get to, I guess I didn't make my point. I want to make sure with the extension line of the 13848, that deadline is September the 11th. And that means that 4545, the election fraud, unless they extend it again, but that 4545, the election fraud committee has to report everything that was voter fraud.
To who?
So
who do they report to?
It'll be, so President Trump is CIC. He's acting commander-in-chief.
Yeah. Just for people that don't know.
People also don't realize that through the years, you've had people say, that's my commander-in-chief. Well, he is in a different way if he has to be, but commander-in-chief is commander-in-chief of military law and president's president over federal law. They're two separate roles, two separate duties, two separate laws. So he stepped down as president and he stepped up as commander-in-chief.
And I want to point out too on the same topic, and I don't want to leave what you're talking about, but a lot of people need to understand there is an inherent power to Trump, quote, being in charge, but not being in the limelight or not publicly, quote, being in charge. There's a lot of things that are happening because of that and things they can't publicly blame Trump for, because if they do, they acknowledge that he's actually in charge. They are totally, like you said, in a stalemate to a degree because they can't move anywhere right now. It's like we've got them cornered. It's like, all right, where do you think you're going to go? And again, they're maybe pissed off and snarling and grumpy.
The key thing still revolves around he issued 3 national emergencies that were not addressed. So like you said, as they move forward, not addressing them, all it was going to do is funnel into a place they can't move anymore. So exactly like the other day, I would say the other day, just about a week or two ago, I was sending it before this all happened to me. I was sending it to my mother and my people. I've already got them all keen on the optics, but I'm like, look at this. Find the key word in this. Well, it was when President Trump put out his message about the Mar-a-Lago thing, which are all optics, but in that whole message, all you had to see were 2 words: executive privilege. And you got a lot of attorneys out there who are still hanging on to the bar. You got a lot of corrupt attorneys they'll tell you that a former president can exert executive privilege. No, he can't, because he needs Congress to do so. If you look in the law books for executive privilege, Congress has to exert that for him. If I didn't know what I knew, and we're in a traditional presidency, not an operation going on, that everything that I know, dump everything that I know for a moment. And if Biden was actually president and that Congress was actually real, do you really think that Congress would exert executive privilege for President Trump? I mean, that alone right there should answer that. So
that and the point you've also made, and I've made this point months and months ago, over a year ago, but the thing with Flynn's brother, there's no way that dude would be in charge of the Pacific if Biden was actually the CIC. No way in hell.
You're right. I brought that up yesterday with just a buddy of mine. I said, look, man, think about this. Really think about it. I said, drive this point in your mind. Okay, you got a General Michael Flynn, 8 years Vice President Biden. 8 years Vice President Biden. All right, this is the main whistleblower of the whole Iraq and Afghanistan operations. All right, they smeared his life, they smeared his family, slandered him, they stripped him of his clearance. Okay, so he had to be pardoned by President Trump. He had to be pardoned. Okay, here's a guy who had to be pardoned. And on January 26, 2021, Biden, if you think he's president, Biden is naming his 4-star brother, blood brother, not brother in arms, but his 4-star blood brother to the commanding position, the commanding theater, the Pacific theater, which is Russia, okay, Philippines, Australia, Taiwan, Japan, they're your main topics right now.
Is where, by the way, with all the China crap going on and stuff, right? Like this is the major theater right now for potential calamity, right? Like at least it's being played.
And Biden is naming the guy he smeared his whole life away. He's naming his blood brother to that position.
Hell no. Hell
just,
no.
you
Not
know.
a chance in Hades. Nuh-uh.
Mm.
Yeah. So that kind of brings up some interesting points. Now, I was kind of curious. So Trump's in charge. I kind of want to touch upon a couple speculations if we can, legally and all that. But what do you think about the idea that they almost have to figure out a way to arrest Trump? Like, do you think that's part of the play? Do you think that's part of the plan? And I've been telling people I think it is. When there was a Q post that talked about the first arrest will shake people to the core, essentially, it almost makes more sense to me that would be Trump. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are, if you've got anything to add to that or subtract from it.
I talk to like the guys that I'm in network with now, and we talk about it. And the power play would be that for this reason. It's the fact that our generals, men and women, they're brilliant people. Brilliant. They're well studied. I mean, we're talking about 5,000 and 7,000 books in their personal libraries.
Wow.
Okay. Ain't all books like To Kill a Mockingbird and Tale of Two Cities and things like that. We're talking about The Art of War. They have the Quran, they have the Bible. I mean, they study everything. That way they're fluent with everything, and they know cultures all over the world. They have to, because they travel all over the world, and they deal with diplomacy in all different sectors of the world as their generals. Even though they're generals in the military, they have to be in those sectors too. They have to be fluent in these sections. So the generals did not want to go down in history as dictators, because at the point that we, America, have to use military force in a dictator form, then what do? We lose all our values and all our foundation. And we're just like every other country in the past. So our generals did not want that. So they wanted it to be a controlled operation, and it be an operation of optics, full of optics, and to wake the American people up in a different form and fashion. So personally, we all think that, yes, that he will be arrested for the sake of, if you remove him, then no one can blame him. Right. Especially if the military does have to act. If they have to act visually, then no one can blame President Trump. And then they would have to go down, going, hey, it was a defense move versus a takeover, a hostile takeover, or martial law. So, that removing him would do that. Now, the thing we would have to get out there at the point that does happen, we don't need the good old boys in the street. We don't.
I've been talking about that.
AR-15s. The military is in full control. We don't need you, and here's why we don't need you.
I've been saying stay home and protect your house and your family. Don't go out into the streets. Yeah.
And I'm not that veteran that's beating our chest that we're better than you, but let me tell you what, I got buddies who are recruiters, and every time that something pops up in this nation, and you got the guys all over their social media saying, I'll fight for it, my buddies are going to the door and saying, where's the line at? Where y'all at? Because you got to fight for America every day. And there's we're down to less than 1% of our population serve in all the branches. So, people saying they'll fight for this country. Well, you got to fight for it every day. But no, we don't need you out in the streets. The military is in full control. We can handle this. Not just the military, but if that did happen, then yes, veterans can get called back into duty or certain duties. And you got civil patrol. We got defense contractors. We don't need the good old boys out in the streets. We need you protecting your house and your home, and doing what's necessary. Farmers, everything, keep the operations going. Truckers, do your thing. Don't worry about authority unless you're told not to do something via the military. It's kind of like World War II when they went to martial law, when they said, like, hey, lockdown, turn your lights off at 6 p.m. That meant turn your lights off at 6 p.m. because you were in enemy territory. That enemy was everywhere. And that's what President Trump alluded to the whole time, is that, hey, this is like Pearl Harbor. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. We have been attacked from within. Well, the left-wing media ran with that. He's comparing all these deaths and stuff. No, he knew the enemy was within, and it's our own people. Like you said, Pelosi, John Kerry, Joe Biden, and Mitt Romney all had children working for Ukraine oil companies and companies. I mean, making hundreds of millions of dollars. So this has been a massive, deep money laundering, child trafficking, human trafficking. When it all comes out, I do warn the listeners and I do warn the viewers that when this all comes out, be careful what you dig deep into when they do release everything to the public, because there's certain things that will mess your mind up.
Yeah, you can't unsee some of the stuff they've done. And there's a lot of people that want to know the truth, and it's like, you be careful what you wish for is all I can say.
If you're an emotional person, like the drill sergeants I had, they say, look, if you're an emotional person, if you cry at a movie, if you cry at this, or if you're you're going to get PTSD. So, like that's just a simple, generic, basic, whatever. So yeah, if you're an emotional person, you're not going to want to see some of this stuff.
And two key points I really want to touch upon, as you just brought up. When this next major part of the phase starts, which I think Trump is going to be significant, and I want to touch upon that more, but the reminding people, like what we can do as individuals, like you said, is to hold down the fort, keep things going the way it is. It is not to go out and be kinetic, because who are you going to be kinetic against? You aren't informed with that information. That's not your role. Right. Your role is to talk, to help inform your neighbors, to help understand what's going on and be helpful to those around you who are going to be scared and confused. That is what we need the awakened masses to do. We don't need you kinetic. We need you at home.
And that's where you got to be, like I'm talking about. That's where you can be. If you want to be a soldier, that's where you be a soldier. Because what soldiers do, protect humanity as a whole, not select groups. We protect, we unify.
We try to leave no American behind either, do we? No. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat, independent, or Republican. No. We leave no Americans behind.
It don't matter if you're gay, straight, Hispanic, atheist, Christian, Buddhist, whatever you are. This is
I don't care what letter you got after your LGBTQ, FGRZ, whatever.
No, it don't matter if you're trans. It don't matter. Like if you're a patriot, look, no one can make that choice for people. I tell Christians that all the time. I'm a Christian, but I tell Christians all the time, look, if people want to do this, they have to answer to whomever they feel like they have to answer to. You can't make someone do that. Here's how you be a Christian. You lead by example. And if they want what you got, they'll ask you, hey, how do you live your life? What do you have that makes you so peaceful and calm and this and that? So it's like, this is a lot bigger than any kind of preference or any kind of religion. It's a lot bigger than that. And yes, they need to unify in that form and be there for people. Maybe even have small groups, but that's what my documents were for, is that, hey, I understand that there's a lot of confusion. And I didn't want to, I know how to talk with Q guys, and I know how to talk this with guys, but mine are based on, look, here, if you can learn the simplicities of law and what happened right in front of you, if you can learn this simplicity and see that this is so monumental, it's maybe bigger than your mind can comprehend, but if you can learn the simplicities of it and then see that the military is in charge via codes and via law, and you saw it visually happen with the National Guard, that was actually this right here. This was 47 United States Code 606 versus what you thought it was. If you can learn those things, I had a guy write in that said he for the first time in 3 years, he had a good night's rest after reading the documents and seeing everything. And it means a lot to me for the fact that I can plan your budgets, your mortgages, you got children, and how are you going to plan for their futures? And if you're trying to help them with college, and so it's one of those things where it's not about me. I just wrote down where the average person out there can understand the simplicities of law and what's actually taking place. And then you can dig into Q or dig in whatever way you want to go with it. You can do that.
Right. Exactly. And it's just so important for people to understand that this is something that's been building for a while. And that's why Flynn and so many other people are talking about starting local, your school boards, making sure your kids aren't being polluted while they're at school. This is where our battle is individually, is in our local community, local politics, making sure we don't lose sight of that. And if we keep that going, the bigger picture is being handled by the military. I think that's one of the things that you've evidenced very well. And I'm so incredibly proud of what you've done, sir. I mean, it's just, wow. Like, I think you've simplified it. I mean, granted, it's, about 5 hours of video so far, plus more. Like, got all sorts of stuff you're on now. You're like a rock star now, or a country star, I should say. But again, it's a very powerful time. Now, one question I have: when do you think this op started? I mean, was Kennedy part of that? Was that a failed attempt? Was that where it began? Further than that, like, what did you? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's where it started, because President Trump laid down the optics around that on the campaign trail that I alluded to in all my videos. Is that President Kennedy was, I don't know, however you want to flip it, but he was the President Trump of that era. Like he was going against the mafia. And they tell you that Hollywood predicts what's going to happen in the future. Well, if you go back to 1938, James Stewart played in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And it's a great movie, but it tells you, and James Stewart too, being a classic actor that he is. But Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was about a guy who became a congressman, and he goes up there and he's like looking at every single bill. He was breaking down every single bill, and they're like, "No, man, we put these in a package and you pass them together. You don't worry about that. You give and take." And well, when you give and take like that, you're not breaking down every bill. When you're passing bills that don't mean anything or it hurts certain groups,
or you have crap stuff in them, rider bills, all that.
Built to where we are, to where then you got to go back and understand, like I preach all the time about Marlborough versus Madison, 1803. It says any statute that bears the appearance of law that doesn't back the Constitution, the constitutional Constitution, the constitutional republic Constitution, any statute that bears the appearance of law that doesn't back the Constitution is null and void. So, that shows you where you have the power as people out there to go, okay, that doesn't back the Constitution. Okay, it doesn't support the Constitution. Here's what the Constitution says. So when you look at that aspect of it, it's very powerful.
Do you think that's why Trump had Jackson's painting in his office? Because Jackson's the one that literally signed us into this, corporate United States of America versus the constitutional United States of America. Do you think that plays a part into why, because a lot of people said he was such a great president, but I almost wonder if he was actually the F up president and Trump's undoing what he did. Yeah,
he was the jacked up president.
No pun intended, Jackson.
Right. But I'm not trying to talk about anybody. He's been dead all these years, but the facts are the facts.
Right.
But JFK started this. Where we go one, we go all. Named sailboat. And so it's like you have all these optics there, and then the optics that President Trump laid down. You just had to known that this was what they call a conspiracy theory for all those years. You would have had known conspiracy theories to know what President Trump laid down as that optic. And I tell the story. There's an 84-year-old Marine that goes to a church nearby that my family put he and I together at a table, and he hadn't been keeping up with anything. And when I told him all these optics, I just told him a few optics and I told him a few laws, and he sat up like this and he went, "It's happening. Oh my God, it's happening. It's happening." Just like that, 84 years old now, Marine. Yeah. 17 years in the Marines. He was like, "Oh my God." He was like, so he broke down to the people what I was saying in his manner. So here he was serving during the 50s. But like you said, JFK, so 200 generals said, never again will we let happen to this country happen with what happened with JFK. If they ever found a chance to unify in a whole, they would take over this country and reset it on its foundation.
Well, that was one of the questions I was asking you. How do they get away? Because like the intelligence apparatus is amazing, is all seeing, right? Like what do they get into dark rooms? They get into skiffs. How did these guys organize? How do you do that?
Well, that's the thing is that, so I know a few retired generals, and every year they get to go to DC and kind of like a general assembly. So they all know each other. And if they don't, they can get to each other because they're in that elite section of generals. And so, yeah, they do. And that's the key thing is I think that's another disconnect we have with civilians and veterans is that that's the key important of military. When I say military, sometimes I'm referring to the military foundation. And then sometimes I'm talking about when I say military, I'm referring to just the generals. But as a whole, people need to understand the military is separate from government. Military can act with or without Congress. They don't need Congress to act. It's its own. We work. We protect the government. But that's the importance of our foundation. The military law was founded 12 years before the Constitution, and then it was founded before the Declaration of Independence. So that's our founders set that precedent. Then that they specifically said we need a swift army of the ground, swift army of the sea, and they created the military first and military law. And then came the Declaration of Independence, and then came the Constitution. So who was our first president? General. So they set the precedent on who has full control. When all else fails, you revert back to what? Military. So, our country has failed for many, many years after the corporation, but it reached a level of like we've seen in the last 12, 15 years of just pure atrocities. They're printing more money than we can account for. When they got rid of the Gold Standard Act a long time ago. We print money and we don't account for it. Well, what happens with that? Well, when you get into diplomacy issues with other countries and you owe countries, or you're not backing up your trade deals, you're not backing up your word, then guess what happens? Well, you owe us money. Well, then that's what does what? Causes war. Well, it's the saying, the motto with the corporation is, chaos and division equals power acquisition. They create a problem they already have a solution to. So a lot of it is also that too. So they want to go into countries that have oil and do what? Take the oil refineries, because it's what? Money.
Yeah. Liquid
it's
money.
Resources. It's right. Resources and money. So, when people can break it down like that and really see that, they're going to be able to see what they witnessed in the last, especially if you had a grandpa or anything like I did that was in World War II. So, my grandpa was hardcore against war, because at the end of the day, most people are willing to talk things out. But when you got people driving division and driving that and making people divide, those are the ones who are your enemies, right?
Well,
there.
Then look at how much money war generates with all the companies that build war machines and
absolutely.
R&D that goes into that, and just so it's insane. Now we're getting down to the last little bit here, and there's a couple still beautiful topics that I want to hear you talk about. One, again, we touched upon the Trump thing, but I want to get into that a little deeper. So is this, do you think, more of a red line if they arrest? Because we've seen the Q posts that said when things happen, Trump will be in Air Force One or whatever, because it was written while he was president, but he'll be protected. And I almost wonder if that might be the arrest. Is it inevitable that it has to happen so the next phase can go? Or is that like the deep states crossed a red line and then we go into this, like there's a punishment for crossing that red line? Like, how do you see Trump's arrest in that? Or am I just totally off base? Like, what do you think's kind of going on?
No, I mean, based off everything that we're talking about, the intel that we're getting, and then, just reading what the Q says and then doing the math on everything, doing the optical math. And like I said, it's math in a different way. It's just, some of it is a little speculation, but at the same time, because we're not a part of that. I wish I was out.
But you understand military law and you understand military ops like a lot better than I do anyway, and probably many in my audience. But
well, I wish I was a part of it. But hey, if I could be part of the team, I'd be there.
Well, you are actually. You're just not talking to the generals, right? But you are a major part of this, a huge part of this. I mean, if you think about what if. Well, I know you have, but and again, I love your humbleness, and I'm not trying to blow sunshine up your wahoo, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, I'm trying to acknowledge you've done something pretty amazing just by following your heart, following your belief, following your love of this country. And just, again, you were just putting stuff out. You had 9 people on your live Facebook thing. Literally, the dude was talking to 9 people, and now he's reaching thousands of people, many, many thousands of people, probably well over 100,000 people at this point, I'm sure. So again, I don't want to play down what you've done.
It's going global too. Like, I'm getting a lot of messages from Australia, New Zealand, UK, Bali, Egypt, Israel. I mean, we're getting a lot of messages everywhere that's seeing it. And that's what's amazing about that. I'll get back to the Trump question, but just about that, Americans, just think about all these countries looking at America. I mean, how do they know about our military? How are they thanking me for my service? They're not from here. They're not Americans living over there. They're hey, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you. Because when America's great, they're great. And so people need to, that's not just a slogan. That's not just a saying. People need to understand these countries rely on us. They look up to us because they want freedoms too in their nations. And
what happens to us happens to the world.
They're going to get it. But so the President Trump thing is that I think we believe, with the extension deadline coming up of the 13848, which is, like I said, I think it's the most important piece of paper document since the Declaration of Independence, because of what all it's set up inside of it and what it's set up visually.
Is that the one Biden had to extend also, by the way, last year? Okay.
Yeah. Why and that's the thing is, I tell people, why would Biden, if it was legit and real, why would Biden extend an order that has a national emergency in it and maritime law and no foreign goods to enter the U.S. and also election fraud committee, all in one order? All that is in one order.
Yeah, there's no way he would have signed that, like with the Flynn stuff. There's no way that would have happened.
And then the people who think that Obama's behind him calling the scenes, why would he do that? It would damn the whole Democrat Party if you want to go back to divisions here. I'm not talking divisions, but if we're going to talk, it would damn them, because it specifically has an election fraud committee in there. And then if election fraud when all the results come out, it's like, why would he extend that? So that's coming up. And if the optic around what I believe, if they arrest Trump, is to get him out of the picture. And I think it's go time for the military to visually act in a more visual form of, this is what's going on. This is what took place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because the New York Times has already alluded. I've got it in documents, the actual article. But this is past December. The New York Times said that the military tribunals will start mid-2023. That's not that long in our, anybody over 25 years old or really over 30 knows that a year goes by like that now. So that's not that long off. Mid-2023 would be actually last month, August. So that's not that far off the military tribunals. And a lot of people, that's the first time they've heard the term military tribunals. But we're talking about military courts. And President Trump expanded the executive order. He expanded Gitmo by $500 million more.
It's not quite finished yet, though, right? But it's really close. Do you have any thoughts on that? I felt like it was like next year or something. It was maybe supposed to be completed. Am I wrong?
Well, they got enough room to handle what we got.
Okay.
But by the time that gets here,
that's true.
I mean, President Trump said tens of thousands of criminals. Tens of thousands, not 1,000, but tens of thousands to hold tens of thousands more criminals. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is a crap ton of people.
Yeah.
Now, I guess one other question that we want to probably try to close off on, because we're running out of time here. But what in your mind is the way that legally the military is allowed to come on our shores and actually start to do the things that I think we're alluding to, right? Like there's something that's got to happen to allow them to do this. Because it's a legal thing, right? They're not legally allowed to do that. The National Guard is kind of that version of the military. So do you got any ideas on how that could happen, how that might happen? Again, we're speculating, sure, but from the legality standpoint, from what you know about military law and all that, how does that happen?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, you go back to January what President Trump did, when you saw the National Guard activated the federal duty, they call it federalizing. The only person who can federalize the National Guard to federal duty is the President of the United States. The other thing is he put in Executive Order 13919 back in April 2020. He put in an executive order that the Secretary of Defense has authorization to activate the reserve components. We have never activated all 50 states at one time for one location, okay? And people witnessed that. So those orders were not rescinded. Just because the National Guard went back to their states don't mean the order was rescinded on what their orders were. Okay, they're still active because I have in my documents every single day since January 2021. There's been and Monkey Works has had that documented every single day for sure since 2021. We both have followed these aircraft every single day since then. There's been no less than 300 military aircraft in the sky. Every
crazy amount of aircraft, and
not just our active duty, but our National Guard. Our National Guard,
and those are the ones we see too, by the way, because there's a crap ton that are invisible that we can't see at all. So that's 300 we see.
There's more than that. And that's not secretive. It's all on a public flight app. If they wanted to be, but we're talking about National Guard out of their states and National Guard out of their country. Okay, the National Guard's duty is in the title, National Guard. They're not unless the president federalizes them and he gives them specific orders. Okay, well, the question alludes to this. Okay, well, Article 2 and Article 4 of the Constitution specifically gives the president like what the president does. Okay, well, he has he has powers that's why President Trump alluded when he said, I have power. You won't believe the powers that the president has. He wasn't saying that just for himself. He was saying he was giving people optics that the powers that presidents have had in the past. Okay, the president has a lot of powers you just didn't know about. And when he extended, what he did is he extended his power as president in Articles 2 and 4, which the title is Title 10, Title 32, Presidential Emergencies Act, the Stafford Act, the War Manual. You have the 10 United States Code 246, 10 United States Code 12406. You have the 47 United States Code 606, which is the most important one. It's called War Powers of the President. Well, when he activated those National Guard to federal duty, that was him visually showing by law every single one of those I just mentioned being extended his powers, being activated. It extended his powers as president. All right. So, yes, for the military to be able to visually act, if the power play is to arrest Trump, well, what they're doing is taking away your legal president, because he's president by legalities. He's not president because I want him president. He's not president because of some Republican thing or conservative. He's president via our law and our foundation. So until that law is changed on the books, or until we have another kind of revolutionary war and some fascism or communism takes over, there's guys like me and gals like me who are fighting and will fight to the death for that original Constitution that he abided by. Like he said, everything will be done in full accordance to the law. Well, if they arrest him, if that's the power play for all the people who think that Biden's actually president or not following these optics, not following and knowing what I'm knowing and everybody else is knowing, then yes, they would have legal right to go, okay, they just arrested the legal president. And they have the authority via what he signed. And then also those national emergencies are very critical. Those national emergencies, once again, were not addressed. So them addressing them, though, they'd have to come out and say, hey, this is what we did. And that would piss off the American people, because if they had to admit what they did that caused a national emergency, then they'd have to expose everything they were doing. So that's why
deep state's in a no-win situation right now.
Yeah, they're in a no-win situation no matter what.
Yeah. And so if the military comes on our shores, quote unquote, that would be the National Guard then, huh? There would be no reason or rhyme for the Air Force, Marines, Army, whatever, actually being the people doing anything. It would be literally the National Guard would be the military arm that we likely see.
No, it'd be all of them. Because,
okay.
Again, when you raise your right hand, take an oath. It says
foreign and domestic, right?
Yeah, I do something foreign and domestic. So and it would depend on what units are needed. I mean, not every unit may be needed. I'm going right in and say, my husband's National Guard, and he hadn't even been hearing about this. I'm like, well, first off, I don't know what your husband. I don't want to bash anybody, but once again, some units may not be needed in this.
Right.
And
it's a need to know basis too, by the way, for anybody, right? So a lot of people, one, probably don't know about it, and two, any true patriot is not talking about this.
Well,
right?
Unless you're in but the other thing is, like I told her, I'm like, look, with all due respect, I wasn't high ranking in the military. I had the knowledge to study this stuff, but I wasn't high ranking. So I didn't know what the general's decisions were. So no one knows what those decisions are unless you're in that, you're in their posse or you're in their entourage as far as their friends. They're not telling their friends, but I'm just saying, like, if, like the generals don't tell many people. The same thing with General Michael Flynn. Someone said the other day, why wouldn't General Michael Flynn say any of this on his tour? And I'm like, he's got active clearance. Why would he? That's crazy.
Yeah, you would never tell the enemy what you're actually doing, ever. And that's, I think, one thing that's really hard for a lot of people in this truth movement to understand is, like, none of us know exactly what's going on, because if we did, we'd talk about it and then they'd know about it. And that can't happen. It just can't happen. So there's a lot of confusion and tension.
Yeah, we still have a lot of people in rat holes that, like, people that were indirectly involved with this. So we gotta flush them out of those holes and let them show their face and let them show their colors. And then if they do anything dumb, they'll be apprehended and they'll be dealt with. But it's really this is a patriot versus the pansies movement. Really, it is. To say it like that, but that's what the military's general basis was to wake people up and go, hey, you got to understand your foundation. You have to understand why you have America, and you got to fight for it.
And quickly, do you think the elections are sort of, I don't want to say a deadline, but do you think that's a major time component that we can almost say stuff's got to kind of either happen before or just shortly after, or whatever the case is? We are weeks to couple months away from probably seeing something legitimate that we'll all see with our own eyes, huh?
Well, yeah, and if you're paying attention, like, to some of the news outlets that are smaller outlets, they're not doing this on the bigger outlets. But that's the other thing is giving the voice back to the communities, giving the voice back to, like, we're talking about towns and communities, and then cities, and then states. But the optics around this, around that, like yesterday, Georgia declared a state of emergency. Well, they blame it. The media says it's for flooding, and that's not the case. We've had flooding in a lot of states before and didn't have to declare a state of emergencies. You just most people pull together, communities, things like that, because we're people, we unify like that when it's a disaster. But a lot of these states have been declaring state of emergencies. Well, that's an optic moving forward, getting closer to this election. The other thing is like Lou Dobbs. Lou Dobbs was fired from CNN in 2008 for saying that the Dominion systems will have future implications on our voting. There will be more voter fraud, and he got fired immediately. And so
ended up on Fox where they can't talk about it either, ironically. But
well, and then Fox got bought by a bunch of liberals, and so it's like people have to understand that these TV shows are syndicated. First off, they have a syndicated audience. And then it depends on who's calling the shots and what they can and can't say. So you cannot believe the tube. You hear this, people think it's like, oh, well, you're indoctrinating us. No, I'm not. I'm giving you truth to our foundation. They're spreading propaganda and things like that. So you'd have to look at the Dominion systems and understand they cheated Democrats and Republicans. It had nothing to do with Trump lost by voter fraud. No, they cheated out everybody. And President Trump alluded to that with an opt-in. He said, hey, Bernie's getting screwed by his own people. Whether you like him or not, he's getting screwed by his own people because it's a set up rigged system. And they want in who they want in, and they make you the people think you're voting them in, and you're not. It's a rigged system.
Absolutely agree with you. Now, Derek, I want to say God bless you. Thank you for everything. You have been so incredibly helpful in the bigger picture. Again, want to plug your website, DerekJohnsonCountry.com. Guys, check it out. Get on there. We've also got thedocuments.info, documents with an S.info. And that's where you can get the wonderful work that he's put together. You're saying about 500 pages now, something to that effect. What was your Rumble channel one more time? RattleTrap something? What was it?
Yeah, RattleTrap 1776.
And that's 3 words. I don't know why I can't find it. Oh, there you are. Cool. Yeah. RattleTrap 1776. Let me pull that over here too.
I only have the one video up anyway.
That's good. Yeah, I'm going to subscribe right now. Guys, he's got 3.5K subscribers. Let's bump that up, and I'm sure other people are going to do as well. What else you got? Anything else that you can plug? I mean, you've got some amazing music. So, guys, please check out his music. But what else you got, Derek? I want to make sure we've got everything covered.
Yeah, well, I probably need to specify anyway because so many fake accounts are popping up now. And I will never message you personally, not from one of those accounts. Like Telegram. I only have one Telegram. It's RattleTrap 1776. The handle, not that what you see is what's displayed. You got to look at the handle, RattleTrap 1776. And then I have True Social, which is at Derek Johnson. That's the first thing I've ever got my name with that I didn't have to put the Derek Johnson or Derek Johnson Country. So that's the first thing I ever got with just my name. So I'm pretty pumped about that. So that's True Social.
And that's with the little dog face at Derek Johnson. That's what I'm seeing on Truth. Does that have like a little like dog in the? Let me see. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Is that billboard picture? Oh no, that's not me.
This says at Derek Johnson.
That's on Getter. You're on Getter.
Oh crap! Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Let me grab the right application here. All right, here's Truth. Where are you?
Yeah, True Social.
Let me find how do I search? All right, so at Derek, I'll pull you up here somehow. All right, cool. All right, well, at least you guys can check him out at True Social. I'll get him pulled up on there.
What else on social?
Very good. And I'll try to put some of those links in the show notes below. You guys can look for those if you can.
Matter of fact, all my links are on the documents page, the main page. It's all just one page, front surface. So all my links are on there just in case.
Very cool. Derek, I appreciate you being on here, brother. I know you're going to be on a bunch of other people's shows. I wish you all the success. I appreciate what you've done to try to get the truth out. You're a lot more humble than I think people understand. And I appreciate everything that you have done to help this movement and to help our country and frankly, to help the world. I hate to oversell it, but that's actually true. But thank you, brother. Appreciate you being on my show.
Well, my honor. And thank you for having me. And thank you guys out there watching and listening. And, if we can do it again, I'll do it again. So.
I'd love to have you back on, sir. We'll talk soon for sure, especially as things start to get a little more interesting in the world. We'll have some neat stuff to brush up on. So thank you, brother, for being on. I wish you all the best. Remember, folks, and this definitely applies with Derek as well, where we go one, we go all. It's On the Fringe with Dan Radio Style.